Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of The Laws That Matter. I'm Carissa Kranz, and today we are focusing on women in leadership roles. And I'm so excited to have an awesome conversation today with Nivi. Nivi is someone who, like me, left corporate America. I worked at a very large law firm, making, one of those sweatshops, 6 figures, and then left to go pursue my passion. And Nivi has a similar background here, working for a global company as a corporate executive, and left it to pursue her passion with plant-based causes and helping other women in need in underprivileged areas, which I think is so timely right now in terms of politics and in everything that we like to address on Jane Unchained News Network. So, Nivi, without further ado, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Carissa. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So I love to take this time to get to know my guests organically. I think that that's the way to do it, because I learn just like the audience learns at the exact same time. And reading about you, you have so much to share. It's almost hard to know where to begin. But I think it's a good place to start with. You started with being plant-based before you identified with vegan.
Yes, that's right.
So tell me about that transition.
Right. Thank you so much for asking me that question. Because often I'd be asked, so are you plant-based? Are you vegan? Are you both? How do you sort of think about it? And I didn't know until I knew that, there was this hoop that I needed to sort of cross over and start identifying myself as a vegan. So I'm going to start from the very start, which is how I even came about to be plant-based. It was 2015. I just finished facilitating a workshop. I was in Hong Kong at the time, and I was based in Singapore. I was working in Singapore. And I declined an offer for dinner with my team, went back upstairs in my hotel room, and 30 minutes later, I just found myself on the floor. And I didn't know how I got there. I had fainted, obviously. I took the next flight out back home, to Singapore, and I checked myself into a hospital. And in that one consultation, I went from being a completely, self-perception, a completely healthy person who was going to the gym, had a little few ups and downs with my blood sugar levels. And, it happens with age, as they say, you're, 35 plus, and then therefore something's bound to happen. I went from being that ordinary person to a person who was labeled a patient. And that hit me really hard. And because I had a background with, healthcare brands portfolio in a CPG company, I had worked with a life sciences med devices company. I felt like I knew everything. If there was a resource that had to, that was published and had to be known, I had that information. And it turned out I didn't. So I started questioning, and I wanted to find out answers. I took a sabbatical, and
you took a sabbatical from this corporate law job, or not law, corporate. It was it was a global consumer goods company, right?
Yes, it was actually, I quit the global consumer goods company in 2013, joined a med devices company, equally global, really large footprint.
Obviously, you're traveling globally, they're staying at nice hotels, and yeah.
Absolutely. And eating the gourmet food, which is all like animal foods, and it's rich, and you think you've arrived, right? There's this sense of I've arrived on the planet, and all I need to do is just tell my travel desk to book a meeting in Japan, and I'll be there, and next morning I could be in Turkey. So it was just, it's the high.
And everything's expensed too.
Yeah, totally. Everything is expensed, including, alcohol and so on. And if you're entertaining a client, then it's a different story altogether. You have bigger limits. So in the name of corporate dining, in the name of corporate success, there is a lot of carnism that's promoted. And at some level, lines blur between, what you need to survive and thrive and be healthy, versus what is it that can get you the next work level in an organization, what will get you the next, corner suite, and so on. So that rationale just doesn't sort of sink in. And going back to your question, I went plant-based during that sabbatical when I read about the China study. So I read that book, The China Study, co-authored by Dr. T. Colin Campbell. Thereafter, once you've seen some things such as plant-based or veganism, you can never unsee them. Mm-hmm. And I've watched Forks Over Knives and Plant Pure Nation, and it hit me hard. A lot of these documentaries, such as Cowspiracy, What the Health, especially when I saw some of those big brand names roll off on the screen in terms of, well, these are the big bad, evil brands apparently who are distributing chronic illness in the world. I felt like I had been conned, like I had been incentivized by our education system, by our society, and by everything else in this, systemically plowing talent through into these corporations.
Yeah, it's a lot like, I think what you're saying, it's the marketing that happens with the meat and dairy industry. It's a lot like the tobacco industry. They marketed it to you like you need it for your health, you need it for your protein or lifestyle. And then in the end, there's addictive components that actually are killing us.
Yes, absolutely.
It's very misleading. And both meat and dairy and tobacco are group 1 carcinogens.
Yes, they are. And
processed meat.
Mm-hmm. Right. And processed foods and beverages as well, sugary carbonated beverages and so on. And here's the fine line. It's when these organizations peddle these carcinogenic substances, they do it in a socially acceptable package. And they actually ride on vehicles like, large international organizations such as, let's say, the United Nations, and they'll do a public-private partnership and create corporate social responsibility initiatives and so on. So what happens is there's not just the external messaging and the advertising, but it's also the internal messaging and advertising that happens inside of the organization that makes the co-opted talent inside the organization feel like they're fighting the right fight. They're on the right side of history.
That's politics. That's wordsmithing. It's how you coach things. And that's when you get into the details, you see what's really going on.
That is so true. Yes.
I also think you said something, but I don't want to interrupt your thought too much, but you said something when you read the China study and you've watched these documentaries, and once you've seen, you cannot unsee. And I think that is true for people that are conscious and that are evolved and have a sense of enlightenment to them, because once they see things, they should not unsee them. But I think there is an ability in our society for people to see things and then completely disconnect and have a cognitive dissonance, and then forget that they saw it and continue to live along their life. So it does take a very special person. You shouldn't totally discount that, to be able to say, I saw that and I'm actually going to do something with it. That's the missing link, right? That's the link that we need to be bringing up more, so to help people. Sometimes they see and then they unsee, and then they see and then they unsee, and then eventually they stop unseeing. It doesn't always happen the first time.
Right. You're very kind. I'm flattered. I guess this process, this trajectory of finally being able to see something and finally letting that cognitive dissonance win also follows a certain path. It follows a journey. And just the other day, I was actually on a WhatsApp group, and, a conversation came up about things that are really uncomfortable. I don't know if you're aware, but there's a huge, I'm originally from India, there's a huge farmers protest that is going on in northwestern India at this point. The scenes on television, very similar to the insurrection we saw at the Capitol. And the farmers got really, really angry and got violent and hurt the cops, and actually hoisted a flag with certain with certain religious symbols. They're Sikh farmers, so Sikh religious flag on top of the Red Fort in New Delhi. And it was actually on Republic Day, the 72nd Republic Day of India. And on this WhatsApp group, we started having these conversations, and I noticed that people who are highly educated, when confronted with something that has the seed of what you call cognitive dissonance, they have a few tried and tested ways of responding to it. One of the best ways to respond to it is to intellectualize it and to analyze it. So they'll start, quoting a BCG matrix and McKinsey analysis and say that, well, this is how you plot these type of people who express their discontent and so on. Then there are other people who try to diffuse it with humor. Then there are people who sit on the fence and be silent. And then there are people who go out there and make fun and mock it. And all of those tactics are, used in the vegan movement or the plant-based movement as well. When you're talking to non-vegans about going plant-based, when you're talking to plant-based people about veganism, and then when you're talking to vegans about intersectional veganism.
Mm-hmm. And you just brought up 3 different classes to address. So that's important because plant-based and vegan are not the same thing. Plant-based is more of a diet. Vegan is more of a social justice movement. It's almost like a religious identity that should have constitutional protection, like I like to say, on the laws that matter. So what was the trigger for you to go from plant-based, because it sounds like it was a health scare, to waking up and saying, I'm done with this. Like, I'm not doing the plant-based diet. I am going to adopt a vegan lifestyle, which means fashion and everything. It means, eliminating the harm to the animals in all areas of your life.
Right. It was a pin drop moment. It actually came 2 years after I turned plant-based. It took me 2 years to really embrace the V word, and
we all need to embrace it. I was born and raised vegan, and it was very taboo. And it is time that the word is not scary to people anymore. Like, I used to be afraid of the word because I was tired of being judged. But enough of that. Vegan is cool, right? That's BeVeg, the company that I have, is cool. And that's what we need to get out. And maybe it's an evolution where people say, oh, okay, I'm going to tiptoe into it. I'll go plant-based. I'm a plant-based lifestyle. I know that vegan thing's the way to go. That's the real way. That's the real deal. But plant-based is just a less of a commitment for people, I think. So it's easier for them to mentally accept right away because it's less extreme in their mind. But veganism is not extreme, and it's not a sacrifice, and that's what people need to get.
Yeah, you're right, Carissa. It's part of the identity construct, right? We wear some flares, on us, on our persona, because we want to associate with those brands. Plant-based is a brand in and of itself. Veganism, as a larger, set, is a brand in and of itself, and there are brand associations related to both of them. When I crossed over, let's say, from the plant-based to planet veganism, it was a session at Main Street Vegan Academy.
Victoria,
yes. I mean, she's
yes,
conduit. And I was listening to Jasmine Singer and Victoria both, and it was carnism that was being spoken of, the concept coined by Dr. Melanie Joy. And so they asked everybody in the session to recount instances and certain stories in their lives around carnism. And you won't believe it, I was in tears because I had these flashbacks of when I'd actually seen, I was traveling to Indonesia, I was on my way to a meeting, and suddenly I was being driven and the car stops, and I'm trying to figure out what this group of people are trying to do. It was actually cow slaughter in the halal way that was going on, and everybody was witnessing it, and people had cameras out to even capture the moment. And later that night, I went on to have dinner at a steakhouse because I was not vegan at that point in time. I wasn't even plant-based at that time, and in that storytelling session, the pin dropped for me. That was how deep it went. That even after being 2 years Whole Foods plant-based, I had not made that connection yet. And I buried away these memories for really amazing educational opportunities such as this that MSVA affords, and all thanks to Victoria, that are brought to the fore.
MSVA Main Street Vegan.
Main Street Vegan Academy. Yep.
Yeah, well, you can rely on Victoria and a prayer for compassion and anything that she speaks about to bring the compassion element, I think, into the vegan plant-based movement for sure. And it is an evolution, and I think people need to understand and not feel afraid of the evolution or feel judged by the evolution, because even I was born and raised vegan, but it was an evolution for me to wake up and say, wait a minute, a down pillow or a down comforter, or wait, my shoes have leather, or my purse is leather. Or, I bought into the consumerism. I disconnected. It started with me as I was born and raised vegan by diet, right? But it wasn't, I had my own evolution. And because of my evolution, my mom, who raised me vegan, has evolved because she wasn't thinking that way. She, oh, a leather couch. Okay. Like total disconnect. Oh, we're in Macy's. Oh, that's a nice leather couch. You don't think about it. We don't think about it. We are trained to not think about it. That's consumerism and marketing. And that's why this network is so important, because it really does, I think, allow us a platform to talk about the issues that mainstream media does not want to talk about or address. And there's so many people who are like you or like me or others, that are sensitive beings that just need to have somebody make the light bulb go off and trigger it. I was a former professional ballet dancer. So I think the way for me that it comes is, in order to get really good at ballet, I had to have many different teachers and practice multiple times a week, right? But you never knew what correction was going to work to make you do 7 and 8 pirouettes on point as opposed to falling out of 2, right? And you never know what teacher is going to say what thing on what day that's going to make you have that aha moment that then you can consistently do 7 and 8 pirouettes on point. And I remember that happened to me because I was able to do 7 and 8 pirouettes on point at one time. And once I found that moment and that feeling, it never went away. And it's not that any of the other teachers before said anything wrong. It's just that one day, one teacher said, you need to pull up out of your hip. So I guess I had this little break between my leg and my hip. So I wasn't pulling up enough. And as soon as I had that correction, I was just like a spin top. And I think anything in life is like that, and we have to we're human. This is a human condition. We all have to be patient with ourselves and allow ourselves time to evolve and not judge ourselves and be forgiving with ourselves. And I know, as a former professional ballet dancer, I'm a perfectionist. So it's very hard to go easy on yourself. But that's the process of being human, I think, is evolving and realizing that, it might just start out as a diet. And then you may have a click and you might realize the compassion side of it. And then suddenly you're an activist, right?
Yes. I mean, that's another word that was, it's like a fully loaded term. And somebody alluded to me the other day, is like, activists like you. And I'm like, wait a sec, now I'm that too, and yes, it's been a hell of a ride.
So let's talk about that ride. So you crossed over to veganism, and then you brought over another level of veganism. So explain that level, the intersectional level.
Right. So, it's like when you enter the door of plant-based living or veganism, there are just so many other doors that you have an opportunity to go open, because it's a house. It's a really large house. And you start opening and you say, wow, I didn't realize that systemic racism was connected to this. I did not realize that the concept of carnism, how we exploit animals, how the food system, regenerative agriculture, veganic agriculture, permaculture, all of those things are connected somehow. And when you start exploring that, it triggers something called transformational learning, which is once you remove one blind spot, it triggers exponential learning versus versus additive learning, which is, I learn something and then I need to sort of I need to have proficiency in, I don't know, in 8th grade before I go to 9th grade and then I go to 10th grade. That's not how veganism works. It's an example of transformational learning because one blind spot has been removed. So from an activism standpoint, what happened was that I had incorporated a nonprofit in Boston. It's called the Virsā Foundation. And this was in 2018. And I'd started lockstep with how I was thinking about plant-based, and I was applying that to my activities in terms of culinary interventions and whole foods, plant-based education. And I'd focused it on women, underserved women in rural northwestern India, and these were artisanal women. So I would go there, and this is my state, my home state of Punjab. And I would have my mom and dad helping me as volunteers, and they're anthropologists, so that really helped with how they were looking at these communities, and they turned whole foods plant-based as well. So I did that, and once I turned vegan, I knew that I needed to do something more. And also it was the pandemic. We had to pivot during the pandemic and really understand what's the pivot for this nonprofit that would take it from being a plant-based non-governmental organization to a vegan activist organization, and then start to lay the foundation for that. So now what we do, and we've actually created JIVINITI, and you've got that on your screen. On December 8th in 2020, I launched what's called the JIVINITI Coalition. And this really leverages, the network that I found after having gone plant-based. And I was introduced to so many different for-profit as well as non-profit women-led organizations. And I said, ladies, we've got to come together. We've got to do something. It's a huge moment, for this country with whatever is happening with the elections, and we've got to really ask our leaders to explore veganism and indeed vegonomy, which is the way out of zoonotic pandemics, which is the way out of so many different things. And that's how the petition happened. It's called Plant-Powered Kamala. That's our hashtag. And I would love it that all your viewers could also help pitch in and sign the petition. So that's what we're doing in terms of activism at this point.
So, and what's the relation with Kamala?
Well, the relation with Kamala, so first of all, we know that, she likes her vegetables. She's mentioned that in several interviews. She's also mentioned at a CNN town hall that she believes that Americans should be reducing their red meat consumption. She's spoken about how, backwards potentially the food system is, and all the consequent structural inequality that it perpetuates. And so I feel that it's important for us to encourage our national leadership. It's not just about demanding things, but it's also about encouraging them and to really requesting and inviting them to move the needle forward in the direction that they promised us that they would. And so now we're hearing all the right words, right? Climate change, and we're rejoining the World Health Organization. We've re-signed, we re-engaged the Paris Agreement and Paris Accord, the New Deal, and so on. We've got to really walk the talk. And if we still keep that narrative to fossil fuels, we really would still be participating in the smokes and mirrors of what's been going on, and we wouldn't have moved the needle.
I like the way you're approaching it with Kamala too, because we know she's not vegan and we know she's not plant-based, but you're doing it in a way like you're giving her credit for the things that she has said and she has done to make her want to follow you and to not feel judged by the movement, but to feel a part of the movement, like she's a leadership in the movement based on the rhetoric she's said. And I think that it's a very successful strategy in getting people to want to go along with you. I remember one of Justice Ginsburg's quotes that I always loved was, she said when she was doing the women's rights movement and the women's suffrage movement that she felt like the other members of the bench were a bunch of kindergartners. And even though they were Supreme Court justices, she felt like she had an obligation to talk to them in a way that was to make them want to join her in the movement, to make them want to go along, not to make them defensive or to go on the attack or to get into a debate about it, but for them to see her as an equal woman of dignity and respect under the law, and for them to see the women's movement from her perspective. And she was patient with them, and she talked to them like her words, like they were kindergartners. So I think it's important because here you are, like with these Supreme Court justices, you're talking about some of the most brilliant minds in the world, and everyone needs to be approached in a way, because everyone on this planet is human. So we all have flaws. Every single one of us are completely flawed. I don't care, who you are on this planet. You're not going to survive being here. We're all leaving here, and we all have a purpose, and we all have a plan. And I think the point is to find our purpose and live it out, which you must take credit for, since you left corporate America, your big job, traveling, nice hotels, nice foods, and now you're taking it on as yourself. And the plant-based movement, you found your purpose, you found your passion. Now you're an activist. But I feel like you're an activist in a way that I am, which Jane always says to me, I'm more of a subtlist, because although I think I might be a little bit more of an activist after knowing her, but I think that I'm much more subtle in my approach. Like, I'm not out there doing direct action, but I'm out there I have a vegan business now, you have a vegan business, and I'm trying to enlighten and educate and motivate and inspire people like you are to want to join us in this movement. So in a way, you're an activist. There's different ways to say I'm an activist.
Yes, there are different profiles, different definitions of it. And I totally, get what you're saying. And I wholeheartedly endorse your approach, Carissa. Here's the thing: marketing, or even medicine, or your profession, like legal profession, right? We're enablers. We're enabler professions. We're in the service of something. And if we could be in the service of one anachronistic system, which we've discovered, and we're now woke and we're enlightened, and we know that doesn't serve humanity, it doesn't serve non-human sentient beings, then we have the right to actually come together and be lawyers, be marketers and advertisers, and be doctors and physicians and nurses in the service of a whole new system, right? Which is why trauma...
It's not only the right, it's a responsibility we have.
Yes, it is a responsibility. I would, even as vegans, I would say it's a moral responsibility. So if we have become woke and we've understood that this is the right, way for the planet to move forward, it would be a disservice to sit on the fence and not do anything with our skills. And which is what we're trying to do at, JIVINITI. I've personally invested in a research program, in addition to coalition building and campaigning. We also do applied behavioral research. One of the things that we aspire to stand for is trauma-informed, research amongst underserved communities, and to understand how we nudge people towards behavior change versus talking at them and RXing, fruits to them and vegetables to them, because RXs don't work. Patient compliance is the biggest hurdle that any, physician has, because that's not how behavior is changed.
Yes, you have to nudge people. You have to give them a little nudge. You have to make it feel like it's their idea, like they got it. Right. So you call yourself a corporate insider. What does that mean?
It means that I understand how corporations operate, how they recruit, how they retain talent, how they exchange talent, how they utilize that talent, and what are the key performance indicators that they are subservient to. And I think that it will just sort of, serve us to listen to just one, statement that I'm about to say, which is, scale is the algorithm that truly drives growth. If there is one thing that a corporate entity stands for, it's that. That's their aspiration.
So how are you using that knowledge from your experience as being a corporate insider working for two global companies that I know of, maybe more, to power your new profession, which is coming from complete passion, but you have a whole wealth of experience as a corporate insider to make sure you're successful in your purpose? This is your purpose. You've been trained for this, right? Your background and experience has trained you to now do this successfully. So how are you incorporating your background as a corporate insider into your nonprofit?
Yes. And so that's a great question. Thank you for asking me that. Number one is education. People look at corporations and they say, oh my God, these are evil things, an even monolith. We talk about the government. We look at that big monolith. We look at the corporation or the industry and we say this is the evil monolith. That's not really so, because it's composed of people like you and I. Yeah. And so therefore, one of the biggest things I want to do is education. That's number one. And myth busting. So which is why I mentioned scale is the algorithm that truly drives growth. That is, if we understand that that's what the corporate mentality is, that they're going to use consumer need states and consumption occasions in the service of scale to drive, shareholder value, then we can start to understand and decode what that beast is about. Mm-hmm. Right? So it's important for us to understand what they stand for. They're not inherently evil. Let me also say that, because it's simply a system or it's simply infrastructure.
Right.
How do we employ or redeploy that infrastructure and that system to actually, instead of peddling carcinogenic substances, but actually producing something that is meant for planetary good and human good, we can actually do that. And that's the second part of it, which it's a big thing to take on. The only slice that I am really passionate about and that I'm wanting to take on at this point is the research. So what I'm doing is I'm knocking on the doors of large national, international research organizations, having conversations with them, talking to them about, well, we know that the company we love to hate, McDonald's Corporation, does all this amazing research, but would they ever want to do research with underserved, women in zip codes that have been really hit hard by the pandemic and talk to them about Whole Foods plant-based behavior change?
Do they?
Absolutely not. They're not interested in doing that.
I had me out for a second, hoping that there was a positive outcome to that one.
Well, that's the reason why, conscious researchers, marketeers, legal professionals like yourselves, and nurses and physicians and so on will need to use the toolkit that we're trained in to repurpose it and to start upcycling it and recycling it and using it to meet the purposes of planetary health and public health.
Which, by the way, I've done with BeVeg as a lawyer and law firm. Jane Velez-Mitchell with Jane Unchained is done after hosting a show on CNN and HLN right after the Nancy Grace show or right before it, and being an award-winning journalist for crime and politics. She said, enough of this. And I have a background also in journalism, so that's how I bonded with Jane. And, we realized, enough of this. We have a responsibility to use the airwaves and our reach to other people's consciousness of what they're absorbing, because we absorb that news, we absorb that TV, and our reality is what we allow it to be and what we allow us to absorb and see. So Jane Unchained News Network is exactly that. You have an award-winning journalist and news anchor from a major network who is a public figure who said, I'm done with this. I'm starting a network that's going to give the news to the people that mainstream media won't cover, that needs to be covered, because I have a responsibility to the animals. I have a responsibility to this planet. I have a responsibility to my fellow humans to give them the truth, to help them wake up, because I have a limited amount of time on this planet and I need to make a difference while I'm here and not waste it. Right. And I think that we're all different. Like you said, it's like a massive system. It kind of reminds me of what Dr. Rao is trying to create with his system and Vegan World 2026 and have these convergence conferences, because it is a lot to swallow and you can only take on one piece, right? So you're the expert in research. That's your job. I'm the lawyer. That's my job. Jane's the journalist. That's her job at the platform. And together, it's like we're an organism or a body. Like you're the heart, you're the lung, you're the brain. And together, we all operate and we will affect change that way.
Absolutely. Amen to that.
Yeah. So what's next for you?
You
could write a book, I think.
I would love to. Victoria has asked, is there a book in anyone? She loves to ask that question to a lot of students. Yes. And in 2021, I have a big roadmap. It's a strategic roadmap that we've drawn up here at the Virsā Foundation. I want to really take the campaign and the coalition to a different level altogether. people who joined the campaign were actually starting to curate some really interesting sessions for them. So there's one partner, they're called the Inheritance Project. And I'm friends with the founder and their chief strategist, and she's going to actually run just for the coalition partners, a 2-hour session basis of how your inheritance and identity shapes your food choices and so on. So what I really want to do is just giving you this as an example that throughout 2021, with the coalition members, I want to be able to bring, more and more educational snippets and moments to them. Mm-hmm. And at a larger level, I want to ensure that our research, gets published. We're in the analysis stage of our qualitative research right now. I'm currently working to create a quantitative piece. There's obviously a huge need for fundraising, Carissa. Mm-hmm. That is something that we all need. I don't have a multi-million-dollar budget the way I used to have, and these things become expensive.
I know. I feel the same thing with BeVeg. It's a global empire and a global reach and thousands of interests. But in order to do things right, you need unlimited money for marketing and scaling and hiring the right top talent. It's tough. And when I know I worked for a big global law firm. I worked for one of the top 5 largest law firms in the world with offices globally. So I totally identify with you with flying first class, staying in the nice hotels, getting the nicest restaurants, being put up, alcohol is covered, everything's expense. You don't worry about anything. And you get a 6-figure salary on top of it. And then on top of that, you might get a bonus if you do well. Yeah. I mean, and then you leave all that behind. That's what they call the golden handcuffs. Yeah. You leave all that behind to say, you know what, this is not a life I'm necessarily going to be proud of. And this is not a life I wish to live. And I only have so much time to do what I want to do. And these are the years to do it. So I'm either going to look back and I knew that making partner at that law firm was not something I'd be proud of at 35 or 40 years old, right? It's not something I wanted to do. So I left against all advice.
Yes.
Because there's just more to do. I mean, and there's some people that might be their purpose and their job to work in that place because they may have a specific purpose to do so. But if you're not inspired in what you're doing and you feel a calling for something else, that's your calling. That's what passion is, the calling.
And I totally agree with you, and I relate to that. And the other thing I would say is that it's important to invest to understand what our calling is. Mm-hmm. It's not easy for a lot of people who are still mired in that system to get caught up like hamsters running on a wheel, trying to figure out day after day what they're going to do, or indulge in politics at the highest levels, try to figure out who's going to be the next senior vice president. Mm-hmm. And honestly, if you're not setting aside some time to think about what your purpose and calling is, you might never even stumble upon some of the books you need to read, some of the documentaries you ought to be seeing, and therefore opening that door or even creating room for that little window in your life, mm-hmm. which might just give you the guts and the courage to fly out of that window. And like as an entrepreneur, you jump off a cliff and you make that parachute on your way down, mm-hmm. right?
And make it on the way down, because that's what people need to understand. There's never a perfect opportunity. You're never going to have complete clarity on when, and there's never a perfect time to do it. Yeah. All you need to do is just start doing it. And that's the key. You got to say, I believe in this enough. I believe in myself enough, and I'm unfulfilled in what I'm doing, and I'm uninspired in what I'm doing. And I don't feel like this is my purpose, and I don't feel like I'm contributing to this planet. And I feel I should live a purpose-driven life. So I'm going to now take that risk. And you can't look back. The moment you look back is the moment the energy of the universe is no longer necessarily with you. You just have to keep going.
Absolutely. And also not rely upon corporate purpose to be made your individual purpose, because that's what's happening too, with greenwashing, mission washing, purpose washing that we see everywhere, with and oftentimes these employees feel, as I used to feel, that I was serving a purpose, but that was actually the corporation's purpose, not my purpose.
Right. And that's what they do. They get the top talent to serve their purpose. And then the top talent, like you and so many other of my friends who I know, are just, let me tell you, superstars, but they're now top performers at those big corporate firms because they make so much money and they don't know. It's very hard to get out. But that's like the top talent. They're the top talent for the big firms, but they could be industry leaders themselves if they ever took the leap of faith.
Absolutely, yeah. But they accept the gilded cage or the golden handcuffs, like you mentioned, and that's sad.
Yeah. So okay, so no books right now, but you want people to sign the petition. What else?
I would love for people to donate. That's
Amazing.
big thing. I absolutely would, love to receive donations. We have a very important strategic research program. We want to be able to publish our research, and it comes expensive. And so we would love for people to donate, not just to the coalition, to the campaign, also to the research, and that's the JIVINITI platform. So that's one. The second thing I would say is that we're also doing lots and lots of live broadcast, conversations. And again, all thanks to Jane Willis Mitchell. She's been supporting and helping and enabling a lot of these conversations. And we have a series that's starting February 4th. It's called Connecting the Dots. And we're co-hosting it. I'm going to be the co-host along with Naja Wright Brown at Naja Speaks. And we have 6 amazing, stellar women from different fields from around the world who are going to join us. And they will be talking about intersectional veganism, which is like my thing. And I'm so stoked about it.
I love that. And congratulations on the new show. That's awesome.
Thank you. It's not necessarily like a new show or whatever, but we're just like starting to call it Connecting the Dots because we felt that, that was needed. And those intersectional conversations are so needed in the vegan community right now.
Well, it really is. And you brought up earlier in the broadcast, but we didn't get into it, is nutritional racism. So maybe you should take a few minutes now and just let us know exactly what that is, because I think that is important. I've had Jasmine Leyva on this broadcast before, and I've done her documentary we featured, and it's an important topic, especially in now our times now politically, I think, to address the nutritional racism that's systemic in our system.
Yes. Thank you for, bringing up this topic. Very close to my heart. Jasmine is part of our coalition as well. She's gorgeous. She's just amazing. And she's also part of our public service announcement that we put out. So it's a 4-minute and a 2-minute video that we created. And we talk about dietary racism or nutritional racism in there. Nutritional racism really is when whatever's the accepted guideline for nutrition is not appropriate for all the different ethnic groups that make up a certain population. And for the United States, it means ethnic groups such as, African American people, Latinx people, Asian Americans, and so on. And when we look at the pandemic, we understand that it's the unnatural relationship that we have, with animals that has brought this upon us. But it's not just that. The pandemic the virus wouldn't be as effective in creating morbidity and mortality in humans, especially in persons of color, if there weren't underlying conditions which are a direct outcome of what we're educated and told is good for our health. Mm-hmm. So there's advertising and marketing on one hand, and then there's national population, nutrition guidance, which talks about dairy, for example, or in the name of maybe not red meat, but lean meat is acceptable. But it doesn't matter whether it's lean or whether it's high fat. It's mean meat. All meat is mean. No meat is lean. That is really, really important to understand. And when you look at the composition of dairy, it has lactose in it. It has other, IGF and casomorphins in it, which are absolutely, paralyzing the state of affairs with our minority ethnic communities at this point. So nutrition-led racism or dietary racism is something which is really important for, in my view, our national leaders, the Biden-Harris administration, also international leaders, the world around, to take note of and to understand, how did this come to be? And that's worth understanding. If you want to do analysis, it's worth analyzing how did this situation come about. What are the colonial influences that may have happened? What is the whole idea of anthropocentrism, Eurocentrism that we see, of the global North trying to perpetuate certain dietary guidelines for the global South? There are just so many different things. And, I just want to take a quick second, Carissa, to talk about a book that, once again, a dear friend has co-authored. It's called Rethinking Food and Agriculture. It's written by Dr. Leila Qasim and Dr. Amir Qasim. Amazing, amazing, amazing book. And this is all about talking about dietary racism, the colonial and the carnist ideology that fuels the food system today. And it's not just here in the US, but around the world. Mm-hmm. Very important book. And Leila is going to be on our Connecting the Dots series as well.
Awesome. Any research that you've done that is particularly enlightening that you want to share?
Okay, so we're right now in the analysis stage, so there's a lot that's going on. I'm unable to sort of, and I have a lead researcher, who's basically said that don't say much, before we actually sort of publish it, the whole thing. But I will say one thing. The big thing that I'll say is what shocked us as we did the consumer field work in the winter of 2020 with our, women that we were researching with. What shocked us was low-income white Caucasian women, low-income African-American women, low-income Latinx women. These are the three cohorts. Every single one of them had trauma in their lives. They're living under the burden of not just racism, not just, trauma, not just chronic illness. It's just a really, difficult and hard life. And when we look at our lives, in some of the prosperous, comfortable zip codes in this country and, globally, it's the kind of, life that we can't even imagine. Mm-hmm. And when we start talking about behavior change, plant-based change or veganism, and bringing that to populations en masse at scale, when it would start to make a difference to the chronic illness of, public health epidemic that we have in front of us, we cannot bring about that change without understanding trauma. Mm-hmm. And putting ourselves in their position. So the research that we're doing will come up with insights which are trauma-informed insights for lifestyle change, trauma-informed insight for product development, for communications development. Mm-hmm. What are the type of advertising pieces responsible marketeers and advertisers and communication creators should be putting out there if they want to talk to people who have undergone trauma? And trauma is not just a small percentage of people. The cohorts that I mentioned to you, they're literally 1 in 3 Americans. 30% of the United States population. That's close to 110 million people. Mm-hmm. If day in and day out, what they go through is trauma, socioeconomic, financial, and environmental racism, not to speak, of dietary racism that we've been talking about, then that's 1/3 of this country's demographic paralyzed. Mm-hmm. Think of the generations to come and the impact it might have on them epigenetically.
Well, it's great that you're keeping plant-based lifestyles part of the solution and giving a group of people a place that they can feel at home at. Because I think in the end, we all want to feel a sense of belonging somewhere with our identity, whatever it is. Like I've had Victoria on the show and we discussed Jewish veg that exists, right? So, and I know it's important for this plant-based movement to really cross all colors of skin and party lines and industry sectors and really be make us see each other as a singular race. But in order for that to happen, you have to join with like minds within a group that you've been raised that is home to you, that you feel like you can identify with to expand consciousness with. So
yes, absolutely.
Good work. Any final thoughts? We're running out of time.
Well, my only thought would be, I really, really wish that people in the corporate world and the rest of the world at large understand that colonialism and carnism are gifts that keep on giving to corporate business cases. As long as these two concepts, these two things of carnism and colonialism survive, corporate business cases, the way they're made today, are going to survive. If we want to make a dent as challenger brands that we all are as individuals and the smaller organizations that we're running and creating, if we want to make a dent into that big beast that we call the corporation or the government, we have to understand colonialism and we have to understand carnism. My only message would be invest time in understanding these two concepts. And once you do, you'll see that we're interconnected.
We are interconnected. Where can people find you? Where can they follow you?
Okay, so JIVINITI is JIVINITI. That's our handle for all things JIVINITI, be it the research or the coalition or the campaign. You can also find me on LinkedIn as Nivi Jaswal. That's my name, and also as JIVINITI Research. And our website is virssafoundation.org. Virsā spelled as VIRSA. And if you want to connect with me personally on Instagram as well, I'm there as Nivisualize, as I love to visualize different concepts and manifest.
That's what entrepreneurs do.
Exactly.
You visualize, you manifest, you make it happen. So awesome, Nivi. It was so great getting to know you on the show, and I wish you so much success in everything that you're doing. You're obviously a girl boss powerhouse. And when you do have some research that you do want to publish, let us know, and maybe we'll have you back on.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carissa. This has been fantastic, and I wish you all the best as well.
Thank you. Now for the next portion of our segment, every week we have a certified globally vegan brand by BeVeg. As you know, if you've been watching our show, I'm the founder and CEO of BeVeg, and BeVeg is the world's only accredited vegan trademark logo in the world. And if you don't understand what accredited means, it means that it is internationally recognized by ISO standards, ISO 17065 and 17067. Any other trademark can just be a trademark. Every company out there owns a trademark for their brand or product. So to have a vegan trademark that's actually accredited is very newsworthy and new for BeVeg, and to be the first and only, we're proud of. And our new brand this week is out of Chile, Katana Vegana. Hi,
Hola.
guys. Hey, you're the founders together? Introduce yourselves.
Sí, primero que nada, muchas gracias por la invitación.
So we have Tony here as well. He speaks Spanish, and Jane Unchained is a global news network here, so we can speak Spanish too. So go ahead and introduce yourselves. Tell us about your brand. English and Spanish are both great.
Ya, mi nombre es Trinidad y ella es Elisa. Somos Katana Vegana. Esto es un proyecto que partió hace un par de años. Mi amiga es chef y cocina unos platos veganos increíbles. Y ella partió con la idea de crear un producto que fuera vegano de partida, que fuera nutritivo y que estuviera al alcance de todas las personas. Y ella me invitó a ser parte y ya llevamos un par de años.
Tony.
Oh, yeah, I want me to translate. Okay, so Katana Vegana, it's in Spanish. They are Elo and Trini. They're one of them is a vegan chef. And they basically started a couple of years ago with their company, and because they have a lot of gastronomical knowledge. And what they're trying to do is to make a product that is accessible for everyone. Yeah, basically, that's pretty much all. That is accessible for everyone. They can cook pretty fast. But for what I can read on their website, it was pretty interesting to see that their product can be cooked in 15 minutes. And they just want to make it easy and accessible for everyone, a vegan product.
And this is the product that we're looking at? These are the brands?
Exacto, sí. Tenemos varios sabores. Tenemos 6 tipos de sabores. Todas son a base de quinoa, que es un súper alimento con muchas propiedades. Así que, nada, muy nutritivas, muy sabrosas y muy fáciles de cocinar.
So all the
Veganas.
products are quinoa based. They're trying to make it like a really healthy option for a burger, for a vegan burger, and really easy to cook. And yeah, anything you want to ask them so we can go
Yeah,
ahead?
where can people find this product?
¿Dónde pueden encontrar su producto?
Tenemos una página web que es www.katanavegana.cl. También tenemos Instagram y Facebook, que es @katanavegana y eso.
So
In-
they're
in-
basically on. So they're basically in every social network, and they have a website where you can shop the burgers. We're gonna post the website so everybody can have
Hang on.
the comments.
That's the dog. Yeah.
También pueden encontrarnos en emporios y tiendas. Ahora con la nueva certificación y con los nuevos envases también pretendemos expandirnos un poco hacia el mundo más comercial.
Mhm. And one thing that I liked particularly about this brand when we were certifying them vegan is, you know, part of our vegan certification deals with controls being in place to avoid any animal contamination. And most places make products that are in shared facilities. And that means that there has to be certain mechanisms in place to control the segregation of time of the production to ensure no animal residues left on the products, or dedicated equipment to keep out animal contamination. And in our case here, they have a dedicated kitchen that's themselves, that no one else uses. So why don't you tell us about the kitchen?
Bueno, la cocina se encuentra en un espacio compartido, pero es personal. En el fondo nosotras tenemos nuestras propias maquinarias y nuestras propias máquinas congeladoras para que no tengamos ningún tipo de contaminación cruzada con el resto de las cocinas que funcionan en el espacio.
So yeah, they basically have since like it's an industrial kitchen, and everything from their tools, from every item they use in their kitchen, like tools or whatever, even the fridges, they are just specifically used for their vegan products and nothing else, to avoid like 100% any kind of cross contamination.
Mm-hmm. And any plans of international distribution?
Nos gustaría.
A futuro.
They will love to. They were looking forward to it. They were actually saying that now with their certification, they're trying to do it even more, and they're going to be selling in some stores. No sé si nos quieran decir en qué tiendas están vendiendo en Chile para que podamos a lo mejor anunciarlas o algo, decir en qué puntos de venta los pueden encontrar.
Por el momento, nuestras ventas como mayoritarias son por las redes sociales, pero eso.
They look yummy.
Son muy ricas, tienen mucho sabor.
So they have a salsa barbecue flavor. They have, which flavor is this? This looks like a
Beetroot.
Yeah, beetroot. Okay. And garbanzo cilantro. I'd probably love that one. I love cilantro. So, any final words or thoughts?
¿Algo más que quieran agregar?
No, eso, que muchas gracias por la invitación. Nos sentimos honradas de estar aquí, por darnos el espacio, y que revisen nuestras redes sociales para que vean nuestros productos. Muchas gracias.
They're really happy to be here, really happy to be certified. They're thanking you for giving them the space to just be here, and to please visit all their social media and their website. We're going to be posting it in the comments down below if anybody wants to order a delicious vegan burger.
What about the prices? If anyone wants to order, what are the prices?
Mira, tenemos precios que son al por mayor y al detalle, pero al detalle sale 1.000 pesos chilenos la unidad, y al por mayor 750 pesos chilenos.
So they're selling in bulk, and they're selling also like in like by piece. They gave me the price in pesos, in Chilean pesos. I don't know what it's the translation in dollars, but it was es 1,000 pesos chilenos por.
$1 son alrededor de 700 pesos chilenos.
¿Y en
Debe
cuánto
ser
las
un-
estás vendiendo más o menos?
Al por mayor en $1, cada una, la unidad.
So if you buy in bulk, they cost you, each one costs you about $1. If you buy in bulk, but they also have not in bulk if you just want to order one by one.
A new version of a 99-cent Happy Meal. They make, never mind. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. You guys follow Katana Vegana. There's their Instagram information, or you can go to, I think, the website. Here's the
website is
website.
up.
They're in
We're just
Chile.
gonna add their Facebook.
And we'll add their Facebook here in the comments. And I would love to try these burgers. So if you ever can send them my way, I want to try that garbanzo cilantro one and the barbecue salsa one. And the beetroot look good too. But I like spicy. So I like flavors. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you everyone else for joining us for another episode of The Laws That Matter. We'll be back here next week at the same time. Every week, we're a weekly show series on Jane Unchained News Network. Also to be restreamed on my Laws That Matter, Carissa Kranz YouTube channel. And it's weekly live at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, noon Eastern Standard Time. So until next